Greetings one and all, it's Eric, your course manager here for AET, coming to you again to talk a little bit more about BandLab today. Specifically, we're going to go into editing, automation, and effects, and how we can combine all those together to form the perfect podcast that will hit all of the checkboxes on the rubric. So I'm starting today with a music track that I imported from BandLab. I pulled this from the pop chart. It is the most popular song today. And you'll notice here this icon. This is a fork icon. And what that means is that this artist has allowed other users to use their song and to remix it. So I'm going to give a shout out to Twin Glocks Beats. Thank you for letting me use your track as the background to my sample podcast. If you're going to borrow other people's music for your podcast, make sure that it is available to you to use under a Creative Commons license and that you give that person a shout out in your design document. So let's head back into the mixer and just take a listen to what this particular track sounds like. All right, not bad. One thing I notice, for most music, when you import it, it's going to be way too loud. So there's a couple different ways to handle this. Number one, we can set the overall volume of a track here. So we're basically mixing individual volumes for individual tracks. The other way that we can solve this issue is to use automation. So this button up here is the automation tab. And what this is going to let me do is to draw in a graph over top of this track. So when I click this, you'll notice right now there's just a line. If I were to click somewhere on this line, it's going to put a dot. And now I can drag that dot and it will drag the volume up and down accordingly. Well, if I want my podcast music to ease in, I can put a dot here and another one over here, and then I can click and drag up, and this way it's going to start at nothing. It's going to be completely silent and then slowly increase the volume till we get to a nice range for background music. All right, I'm going to click off the automation track here. Now I'm going to add in my voice track over top of this. So I'm going to go here to add a track and then click voice/mic. That'll add that new track in there. Super simple. Going to need to position the head up top, this little downward facing white arrow, to where I want the recording to start. So I want it to start about right there. And then I am going to record over some voice. So just give me a second, and through the magic of time-lapse photography, when I snap my fingers, it'll be done. Snap my fingers and look at that. There is a track. Let's take a listen to how this is layered. Greetings, y'all, and welcome to the Quarantine Podcast with your host, Eric. Even though we're all on lockdown, I hope you're still finding joy in all the little things in life. As for me, I'm just sitting here talking to myself in my living room. There's a couple different things that I noticed right away that I want to fix with this, and let's go and take a look at those specifically. The first occurs right around here. I noticed that the metronome sound kind of bled into my track. I recorded my voice in 3 different segments so that if I made a mistake, I could go back and easily re-record. So if you listen here, you just hear that one little tick of the metronome in the background, and I don't like that. So let's talk about editing and how we might fix that. I'm going to make sure that my voice and mic track is selected, and then I'm going to come down here to editor, and that's going to bring up my actual track. I can scroll over. I'm going to select this track by clicking on it. You'll notice here there's some dead space before my voice. I can cut that out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to position the head and I'm going to slice this just like it were an old school tape or some film, and I'm going to slice it right here using this icon up at the top. And now I can just highlight this and delete it out. And I can do the same thing over here. I know that this right here is that metronome sound. So I'm going to position the head right there. I'm going to select that track, and then I'm going to hit slice, and now I can hit delete, and that's going to be gone. So when we listen to it now, we shouldn't hear the metronome in the background. Let's take a listen. Even though we're all on lockdown, it's gone through the magic of editing. So what I recommend you do is to go through all of your track, and anytime you see dead space, to go ahead and delete it out. Select the track one more time, we hit slice, and then we just delete. This way there's going to be no background noise that may get in the way, and everything's going to sound really crisp and really clean. I'm going to go ahead and edit all the dead space out in the blink of an eye. So I've gone ahead and cut all those sections out. One thing to know with editing is that I can also take these sections down here and I can drag them. So if I want to move sections, now that I've sliced them, I can move individual sound waves. Let's practice doing that as we insert some sound effects to make sure that the sound effects and where I'm speaking cue along together. So I'm going to close the editor. I actually have the files in another folder, so I can just drag them over and they will load up. So I'm going to do that. I have two different sound effects. I can listen to them by soloing a track, and I solo a track by just hitting this S. That means that everything else will be silent and I can just listen to this. So there is a door slamming, and my other sound effect sounds like this. A cuckoo clock. I want these to be strategically placed within my podcast, so let's slice them up. Much like I did before, I'm going to highlight the track, I'm going to go down to Editor, and then I am going to cut out some of this dead space. These two sound effects were chosen because they cue up pretty well with what I'm saying in the podcast. When I say the word lockdown, I want the door to slam. When I say that I'm sitting in my living room talking to myself, I want to hear the cuckoo clock in the background. Both of these sound effects I got from freesound.org, so you can start a free account there and download all sorts of interesting sound effects to add to your podcast. I'm going to rename these tracks. The default name from freesound.org leaves a little bit to be desired, and I can do that by clicking these three dots and then clicking rename. I put SE for sound effect, but another way to do this would be to just recolor. And remember, we can recolor tracks by also clicking this dot and then selecting the color. So maybe I want all my sound effects to be purple, and I want my voice to be blue, and I want background music to be red. That way, I've color coded what the different pieces are inside of my track, and it makes it super easy to know what I'm looking at. All right, now I'm going to just move these tracks around and see if I can line them up where I want them with my voice. One thing that I noticed is that I begin talking very soon after I say the word lockdown. The problem there is that this door slamming is really loud, and I don't want that to interrupt. So again, I can go into the editor, I can slice right there, and now I can move that track. All right, I think I have it where I want it, so let's take a listen to how it sounds all together. Greetings, y'all, and welcome to the Quarantine Podcast with your host, Eric. Even though we're all on lockdown, I hope you're still finding joy in all the little things in life. As for me, I'm just sitting here talking to myself in my living room. All right, it sounds pretty good when it's all put together. I'm going to add an effect to the cuckoo clock. I feel like the cuckoo clock should have kind of a dreamy feel to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add kind of a delay and an echo. The effects editor is down near the note editor, and here I can click add effect. I got to make sure that the right track is selected, and it is. When I click here, I have a bunch of different options. The one that I want is this delay, and I'm going to put a filter echo on it, but you are more than welcome to play around with a lot of these. So I'm just going to put a really simple filter echo on this. Let's take a listen to it now. Myself in my living room. I like it, but I want the delay to be a little bit more. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to turn up the notch. Right now it's overlapping too much for my liking, so I want it to kind of be more rhythmic and elongated. So let's take a listen to how that sounds. My living room. So in this way, I can play around with effects and I can really make my podcast punchy, in your face, and fun. One last thing to do here is I will go back to my automation track and I will just fade it out here at the end because my podcast is short and sweet. Now you'll notice with automation, I can control other things as well. So for this cuckoo clock down here, the main automation track is volume, but now that I added a sound effect to it, all of these other options are available too. So if I wanted to change sound effects as a track goes on dynamically, I could actually select that and change the sound effect as the track is playing, which is awesome. Of course, as I've been doing this, I've been taking tons of screenshots that I'm going to be putting into my design document to highlight the process and make sure that I'm getting credit for all of these edits and all of these advanced techniques that I'm using as I'm putting my podcast together. My last step is going to be exporting the podcast. So I can do that by coming over here to File, to Download, and then I'm going to mix it down. When you download, I highly recommend that you do either the highest quality MP3 or you do a WAV file. Definitely make sure that as you go through your project, every time you do something major, anytime you make a change, that you save it to the cloud. This will not save automatically. It is not a Google product, so make sure that you're constantly hitting that save button in the upper right-hand corner. So best of luck, students. Burn those creative fires, and let's hear some amazing podcasts as we finish out the year in style from our living rooms. This is your course manager, Eric. Until next year, signing out.